Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 5, Episode 5, The Assignment. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and X as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct, and as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we are awesome. I love doing this show, and I hope that those of you who've been listening have enjoyed following along with us as we recap these episodes that are over 30 years old and bringing you some hopefully new takes, new insights onto this show that the one David is learning to love, and me that I love so much. Okay. Yeah, thanks for joining us. And I do apologize. There has been a bit of a lull in our production here. We've had some issues putting out some episodes lately. Everything from just technical difficulties to even sickness plaguing us a bit, and obviously family emergencies as well taking us away. But we are back, and barring anything else extreme happening, we will be back regularly. Okay. As David told you, all the places you can find us and follow us, please do so. And if you do tune in on our YouTube channel, of course, leave us a message, note, any questions, comments, concerns you may have. And we may or may not get back to you. Depends on, how nice you are. So
Be
now, before we
forewarned.
be forewarned, we reserve the right to not talk to anybody who's a jerk. So there. But before we dive into this episode tonight, as always, want to give ourselves a chance to check in. And since it has been a while, David, how have you been?
I'm good. I'm good. So last time we talked, I mentioned I was going to start reading a biography of Napoleon in preparation for the Ridley Scott film coming out for Thanksgiving. Whew, man, it is hard to keep up with this book. There is a lot going on. Not that it's bad, but it's hard to follow battles in written form. It's just hard to like imagine what's happening and see it. So I've enjoyed the book, but there have definitely been times when I've been like, I need to go on YouTube and find someone who can explain these battles that are happening. And it's been good to watch some videos. There's some great stuff out
I
there
was going to ask you. So did
explaining.
you find some? Do you find some YouTube videos that do a good job with that?
Yes, there are some fantastic ones, and they do a fantastic job of just showing the battle lines, who's where, what's what, talking about the ramifications of it. The Napoleonic Wars happened over a period of about 15 years, and Napoleon won over 90% of the battles he was ever in. He was a master
Strategist.
strategist, uh,
Strategist.
and he was fantastic. I just got done, I think yesterday, with the part where he went to Russia, the big Russia campaign that was a huge failure, and why that was a failure. So I'm near the end of the book, but I'm trying to read 50 pages a day, and I'm like 75 pages behind what I would have liked to have been at, simply because it's work has been busier, which has been good. It's hard to follow some of the stuff, not because the book is badly written. Again, it's just that when you're trying to read about battles, you like want to go watch a video, and the videos I've found are like an hour long, and so instead of reading for an hour, I'm watching for an hour, which has been fantastic. But during reading of this book, I realized something. And so I told you last time that once I got done with Napoleon, I was going to move on to the Count of Monte Cristo. But I decided that I'm actually going to pause that and instead read War and Peace. So instead of reading the Count of Monte Cristo next, I'm going to read War and
Whoa.
Peace next.
Whoa.
I
What,
know,
what bait and switch is this nonsense?
I know, but for the simple reason that War and Peace happens like they're both fiction, but this happens before the Count of Monte Cristo. So I didn't know this about War and Peace because I'd never really been interested in War and Peace before. I just knew it was like the longest novel ever written. I mean, this thing is
Yeah.
a tome. It's 100 pages longer than the Count of Monte Cristo, for example, and the Count of Monte Cristo is already huge as it is. But
Yeah.
this happens, or at least a majority of the plot happens during the Russian invasion of Napoleon's Russian invasion, because it's set in Russia. So I was like, well, I like the idea of reading this slightly before reading the Count of Monte Cristo. So I will delay the Count of Monte Cristo just a little bit, or about 4 weeks because it'll probably take me 4 weeks to read all of this, and
Jesus.
then I will read The Count of Monte Cristo because it's so good. I really do want to read it. I mean, if you were asking me what am I excited for, I'm excited for The Count of Monte Cristo. War
I
and Peace,
mean,
okay, all right. It's just like it's the next book that I think makes sense from what I'm reading, but I'm looking forward to Count of Monte Cristo. Don't get me wrong.
I was actually thinking about breaking mine out and reading along with you because it's been a minute since I've read it, and it's such
Uh,
a great story. I've always enjoyed that story.
oh, it's so good.
We talked about this before. I had read it during the pandemic, during our lockdown, and it was great. And I mean, it was just like it's that classic, when you read something when you're young. Like the first time I read The Count of Monte Cristo, I think I was 13 to 14 years old. And
Right,
then, I've gone back and read excerpts, and there's movies and whatever else that have come out the intervening years, of course. And
right,
then during the pandemic was the first time that I sat down and just, had my book and was going to read my book again.
right.
And in reading it, it just seemed almost like a completely different book. Like I feel
Yeah.
like I have a pretty fantastic memory,
Hmm.
but reading something at 13 versus reading something at 34
Right.
is different.
Yeah.
And I've wanted to read it again, and so you were kind of giving me an excuse to read it again. Not to mention that we've got all the great books in the Expanse series that we're working our
Yes.
way through as well. So
Right.
you're kind of all over the place with your history reading, and then your jump to the super far future reading and everything else. And I did
Yeah.
want to say also, since you were saying you were on YouTube when you were watching these video breakdowns of Napoleon's stuff, it's like you got to be one of very few people who like does the internet right, like uses the internet right. Like I get on YouTube and I fall down a well
Oh.
of stupid animal videos
Oh,
and
dude, I
weird,
watch cat videos. Don't get me
you know,
wrong. They're the
or
best.
what was the one that I'm stuck on right now is this guy who goes around and he drains like abscesses on cow hooves and stuff.
Oh, I've seen
I,
stuff
I
like
don't
that.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know what his name is, but he's like this Irish dude that goes
Yes.
around and does it.
I think
And
I know exactly who you're talking about. I've watched
I've watched
someone
so
like
many
that.
of them,
Yeah.
so many of them. I find them utterly pun intended, I guess, utterly fascinating. And I've watched a bunch of those. Never occurred to me, hey, you know what? You could watch a total, breakdown of the Napoleonic Wars. No,
Yes.
doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
Or the endless Trek clip shows and whatever else that I have caught in
Right.
the intervening whatevers. So
Right.
yeah, congratulations, David. You are doing the internet right. So thought I'd give
Well,
you that
thank
little
you.
shout out.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Um, but yeah, so Nemesis Games, you are in it. You're about halfway
I'm in it.
done.
I'm
Last we
about
talked.
halfway. A little snafu is going to delay me a little bit to get back into reading it,
Right.
but I will go and get my copy and resume reading it again.
Right.
And I realized when I was looking for the fifth book, I only bought up to the fifth book.
Okay.
So because I was like, "Where's my?" And then so I went to where I keep all my books and stuff, and there, this 1 through 4 is lined up there, and I don't have the other ones. And I was like, "Why don't I have the other ones of these already?" And I remember thinking when I bought the first five, how I said, "Just in case I don't like them."
Right.
But it's like, "But you're going to buy five of them in case you don't like them, and you're not going to finish the series." Whatever. That was my justification for not buying them all.
Right.
Now, here we are in the fifth book, going to finish the fifth book probably pretty soon. And then I'm going to be like, now I've got to find the sixth through the ninth, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
actually, there's the sixth through the ninth, and then there's like the one that's like a
Short story
short
collection.
story, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
now, for you Expanse fans, you should also know that if you're a fan of those Telltale games, you should be aware that there are two games based on the Expanse that are getting ready to come out. One is titled just The Expanse, and it is if you're familiar with Telltale games at all, they are kind of these episodic games where you have the ability to make certain decisions within the game to kind of tell a story yourself. And
Right.
the first game, again, is just called The Expanse, and you get to play as the character Kamina Drummer, and you will be able to work through her character arc, and it's supposed to take place shortly after she decides to leave service of the OPA and
Mm,
become. She's like she leaves Fred Johnson's service on Medina Station, and she's out with her own ship and crew and doing things. So
right.
that's the character arc you get to portray then. And then the next one that is getting ready to come out, and I believe this one comes out right around Thanksgiving, is where you get to play as Christian Avasarala. And
Mm,
and that story is that she is it's shortly after the attack on Earth, and she's trapped underground with some of the members of the ruling party, whomever they are. And
hmm,
while they're trying to figure out what's going on and move through the disaster of the attack and everything else, there are people who are also trying to outmaneuver her and take power away from her. And
right,
you have to not only figure out how to respond to the attack, but also how to keep your seat, keep your
right.
power. So
So
and
the real question that needs to be answered: Who is going to be voice acting the character
well,
of
it's
Avasarala?
Sheree. It's Sheree
I was gonna
Agdashloo, of
say
course.
it'll be a betrayal of all kinds
It
if
would it would
that's
be. It would be there'd be no point in doing the game if she
good.
wasn't voicing it. In
Okay.
fact, I found out that about the game because, as you know, I'm pretty much following her on everything ever, and she posted the announcement on Facebook that she was back as Christian, and it's a little bit of a tease because she said she was back as Christian, and I was like, oh my
Mm,
God, the show's back. And then it was no, it's for this game, and she's doing the voice. Now you should know that Sheree Agdashloo is an incredible voice actress as well as just being an incredible actress. She has
right.
lent her voice to so many different animated things, TV shows, games, all kinds of stuff. If you played the Mass Effect series, you heard Sheree. If you played that game Arcane, which was then turned into a TV show, you got Sheree twice because she's in both the game and the TV show.
League of
If you played
Legends.
yeah,
Mhm.
if you played Assassin's Creed, she was in that. She does so much voice work because she has such a very incredible, distinct voice, and then
Yeah.
she's a great actress. So just a lot of Sheree, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. So go check it out. If you have a Steam subscription or anything like that, you can find the games there. And again, they're coming out the Christian Obsarala game is supposed to be coming out on Thanksgiving, and then the Camino Drummer game, I believe, is coming out in December. So just be on the lookout for both of those if you're interested. So,
Gotcha.
but but we're not here to talk about all of those things. We are here to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. We do try to weave a bunch of stuff in, of course, but that is the core reason that you all have gathered here to listen to our dulcet tones, right? So
Of
for this
course.
episode, the assignment, I'll go ahead and give us our recap so we can dive right in. Now, keep in mind, we're just going to be hitting the high points, the salient details, so that we can break down this in greater detail for you throughout this. If you want to know the full ins and outs of what happened, please go watch the show and come back and join us. I mean, obviously, we're doing this live, so you won't be able to have our same witty repartee live, but you can still join in whenever you do finish the episode. You can watch this episode and all Trek episodes on Paramount Plus. So go check that out. Come back and see us. So now this episode being the 103rd episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, we are focusing on the O'Briens, the other family that we have on the station here. And this episode starts with Chief O'Brien, and he's upset about having killed Keiko's plants.
Yep.
Basically, we know that Keiko has been gone for a few days. I think it said it's like 5 days. She's been gone to Bajor, and he was supposed to be taking care of these plants for her. Didn't do a great job of it. Now he's worried that she's going to be upset coming back to the station. He goes to greet her at one of the
Docking
docking
bays.
bays, yes. And he presents her with her favorite chocolates that she just proceeds to munch away on while he totally throws Julian under the bus for the death of the plants. And she's like, ah, they're plants, no big deal. And he's like, that's right, that's great. He's so glad that his wife seems to be so progressive in this acceptance of the death of these plants that she's, according to him, taking care of for months, even years. That's when Keiko tells him that she's not really Keiko, that she is a being that has possessed his wife's body, and unless he does exactly what she says, she'll kill his wife. So, of course,
Yep.
he thinks she's joking. He thinks that, she's got some kind of weird brain fever until her heart stops and she basically dies right in front of him. And before he can alert anyone, she pops back up and she's like, nope, you tell anybody and I'll stop her heart forever. Your wife will die.
Right.
So now he recognizes that she's serious, but he's still not 100% sure. But he starts to go along with this plan. She gives him a test on some equipment she wants him to rewire, recircuit, whatever it is, engineer his way through. And then she finally sets him to task. He's got 13 hours to realign all of the communications relays and certain sensor relays on the station. While all this is going on, it's also the chief's birthday, and he's got his daughter to consider. And basically, Keiko makes it to where he can't warn anybody. For if he does, again, the real Keiko will die. So he does try to figure out a couple of ways that he can circumvent her control over him. None of these work, even to the point where at one point where he thought he had a free moment where he could warn somebody, the entity inhabiting Keiko's body throws her over the ledge on the promenade and almost kills her.
Right.
So now he
Right.
really decides to set to work. He's realizing that the job that she's given him, he won't be able to finish on his own. He enlists the help of Rom, which I guess Rom is kind of our B story in this, because Rom, as we know, has quit working at the bar and is now a part of the maintenance crew on the station.
Yep.
And so Rom now being a part of the maintenance crew, um, no one really interacts with Rom very much, which allows Rom to get his work done exceedingly quickly. So
Mhm.
the chief takes Rom under his wing or into his confidence and gets him to do some of the work for him.
Right.
Eventually, though, Dax catches on to some of the changes that are being made on the station, and they realize that there's a saboteur on board, which is
Right.
obviously O'Brien. They set about trying to investigate who's doing what. O'Brien basically uses Rom as a scapegoat and kind of to point them in the wrong direction, more like a red herring, I guess. Points
Right.
them in the wrong direction so that they will focus on Rom while he actually tries to get the work finished. Rom is arrested. They throw him in a holding cell. Odo tries to interrogate him. He doesn't crack. O'Brien comes down at the behest of Rom and Cisco and Odo to answer Rom's questions. And that's when Rom basically points out that they're turning the station into a giant chronoton beam, which would kill the prophets or the wormhole aliens who live in the celestial temple, also known as the wormhole.
Right.
This is when O'Brien becomes aware of that, like that, what this entity may truly be. We've gotten some other clues along the way, like at the birthday party, there was a mention of Pa Race, and so now we hear the whole story from Rom via his knowledge from Lita, who's his Bajoran girlfriend. So this is where we find out that the prophets, there were two groups of them. And the first group, or not the first group, but I guess the whole
The good
group of them
ones.
ended up right splitting. And the bad ones, who were called the false prophets, were kicked out of the celestial temple and encased in crystalline jail cells basically in these caves on Bajor. And
Right.
they have forever kind of held this, grudge against the prophets for doing this, and they became known as the Pa race. And that's what is inhabiting Keiko, one of these Pa race, which has escaped when Keiko was down on the planet for those 5 days, has inhabited her body, and now she is trying to get her revenge on the prophets that are still in the Celestial Temple.
Right.
They take a runabout. They go to the opening of the wormhole. They set off the series of changes that they did on the station, which turned the station into this chronoton beam. But instead of the beam going directly into the wormhole, O'Brien has changed the coordinates so that it hits the shuttle that they're on, which
Right.
basically electrocutes Keiko and kills the power race inside of her, freeing her.
Right.
They return to the station, to which they eventually, clear up matters, and everybody goes home. Everybody
Yep.
is happy. Keiko is
The day.
free, not dead, and yes.
Yep. That's it.
So that's
You're
essentially
much.
it. There is more, but we're going to get into that.
Yeah. You're very good with being succinct and getting to the point for sure.
Yes. Trying to be, so now we
Yeah.
can have our remaining, 40 minutes to actually talk about all of these points. And there's a lot here that we want to get into.
Yeah.
But of course, I want to ask you, as always, as this is the first time you've watched the episode, what did you think?
Yeah, I like this one. It's an episode where finally Keiko, and who's the actress who plays Keiko? I know we've mentioned her many times. Um,
Rosalind Chow.
there we go. Rosalind Chow probably has more screen time in this episode than she's ever gotten in an episode before. Even on TNG, I would say she is allowed to. I mean, she's the antagonist in this episode. She's never been an antagonist like this before, so she gets a lot of time to work. And she's not playing just Keiko; she's playing this possessed version of Keiko, and so she's very
Evil Keiko.
manipulative. Yeah, your wife knows you, and I know everything your wife knows. She does a great job of being, like that sickly sweet. She's sweet, but it's all just poisonous. You know, it's not true sweetness. It's just all that. Bleh. So she's great, and the whole time I'm with O'Brien. I'm like, how do I get around this? How do I? I wouldn't take. I would. No one would bully me around. I would tell the wormhole alien to get bit. Like I wouldn't take it. But O'Brien, he's loyal to his wife. He's kind of a simple guy sometimes. Like
Mhm.
he doesn't even realize what's happening as you said until Rom points it out that they're turning the station into a giant beam. And that means that's when O'Brien realizes how to solve the problem and solves it in the nick of time to save Keiko. So it's a fun episode. It's always fun to watch a character in episodes like this. In an episodic show like this, you get to know your cast of characters, and then when one of them has to go rogue, that means it's fun because you trust all the other characters. You don't want them to be betrayed, and you want your character, the one that you're following, to like get away with not being in trouble. You don't want them to be harmed somehow. So like the moment when Odo confronts O'Brien and O'Brien's making the final touches and Odo's basically interrogating him in that casual way, and then he has to punch Odo out because again Odo's now a humanoid and so he can be punched out, which is a great point. And that wouldn't have happened before. So this is a great moment for us to use that feature of Odo's new body. He wouldn't be knocked out before. Um, so yeah, I like this episode. It was fun. It was different. It still keeps the wormhole in mind. It gives us more about the wormhole aliens in particular. So yeah, it's a good one.
That's part of it in particular that I really enjoyed, was this diving a little bit more into the mythos that is the prophets. I mean, that's kind of where, I mean, not even kind of, that is where our show started all the way back in season one in the pilot, and how important and influential the prophets were. And we haven't really seen a whole lot dealing with them,
Right,
and how it kind of directly influences things in the Deep Space Nine verse.
right,
Not yet. We're getting there. A lot of the stuff is building upon itself. But I mean, if you think about it, every instance so far that we've dealt with the prophets has always been these kind of tangential stories, like when the prophets changed the Grand Nagus and made him this, you know, humanitarian, basically, for lack of another term, or when they had that one guy come back from the past
pass.
and
Yeah,
he was advocating that they return to their caste society system, that Bajorans return to their caste society system, things like that. And now we have this episode where we're not so much dealing with the prophets as we know them, but we're hearing about this falling out they had with the sect, with another group of them. We're
right,
finding out, not all the prophets were good guys, were these benevolent beings that the Bajorans have always worshipped. There
right,
were this other group that clearly had a more, I guess, malevolent bent to them, and we
right.
don't exactly know what they were doing to be called false prophets, but clearly it was something not in line with what the majority of the group had decided was the correct path, and they were
Right.
cast out and imprisoned on Bajor. Now, I mean, you could say whatever you want about imprisoning your enemies on the planet of the people that you're trying to bring out of, you know, the Stone Age or whatever it is, but
Right.
hey, that was their mythos, and apparently it was correct.
Yeah.
So, and this also kind of lets us see that there's more to the prophets than just being these, omnipotent uh, God beings. They're not. Um, how do I want to say it? Not not gods in the way that I guess we would think of gods. I mean, they're clearly a highly advanced alien race.
Right.
They exist on a whole other level and conception than we do, but there are some aspects of them that are um I guess somewhat relatable here.
Right.
So, Rom tells this story about how they were cast out and that there is this, thing Costa Moran, which talks about their banishment. And so they've kind of just been holding a grudge ever since. And now now that one has escaped, the first thing they want to do is go right back there. They want to go back to this place they were banished from and take it over. And that's what Keiko's whole mission is. So,
Right.
a bit one-dimensional though for a being who, I mean, as we can see, can possess the body of a human person, obviously wields some greater power. It seems like
Right.
it's a waste that the first thing you want to do is go back and exact revenge. I mean, you're free for the first time in however many countless centuries that you've been holed up in the fire caves. Why not just go somewhere else and do your own thing? You're
Yeah.
free.
Why is
Like,
this
get
what you
out of there.
choose to do? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm glad you mentioned it. Yes, the fire caves. This is the second mention of fire caves in the whole show so far.
The
So
whole show.
I'm finally like inching toward maybe what we named our show after.
Hmm.
We're in the
But
middle of season
why?
5, and I still don't know why we chose the fire caves
Still
as
doesn't know
our
why we call
title.
them the fire caves. Well, we're getting there. The
Very
fire
good.
caves is where all the bad stuff happens. So naturally,
Yeah,
we name a show after it.
it'd be like naming
So
the show Mordor, a Lord of the Rings show.
yes,
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, yeah.
I
I mean, I don't have much to say about this episode because I like it, but it's also pretty simple. If that
it
makes
is.
sense.
It is very simple. And I was going to say, now let's get into some of the critiques because there are a couple of things here in this show that really bother me, and it's
In this episode in
in
particular.
this episode, yes, in
Okay.
this episode that bothered me, and it's all about the storytelling because and this is I think this is Trek's great failing. They don't account for technology well. They have all of this great technology around them, right? All the stuff that
Right.
can do just damn near miraculous things. And
Yes.
yet they can't do something as simple as send a text message. Like,
Yeah.
how simple would this problem have been solved if the chief had the ability to send a text message to
Yes.
Cisco and alert him that something was
Yes.
going on with his wife?
Yeah,
He
that's a
might
good
not have
point.
been able to explain all the way, but he could have got the wheels going. They don't have group texting. The senior
Well,
staff isn't in a text chain
well,
together and can
let's
send a
let's
message.
pause a moment because I saw the episode a week ago. I haven't like usually I watch the episode right before we record. You were sick last week, so we didn't record it right away. So they do use their comm badges to talk to each other regularly. And
Mhm.
remind me why Keiko kept him from doing that.
She
Like,
only stops him the one time when they
right,
first meet, when he meets her in the docking ring, and she stops Keiko's heart. When the being stops Keiko's heart, he
right,
goes to tap his comm badge, presumably to call for Dr. Bashir or some medical assistance, but
right,
she pops back up before he can hit it. She grabs his hand. She tells him,
right,
"You tell anybody, and I'll stop her heart forever." But the thing is, as you watch the episode, she's not with him 100% of the time, and
right,
he uses his comm badge multiple times throughout the episode, and
right,
she, as far as we can tell, isn't aware. Now,
right,
an argument could be made that maybe she is using it to keep tabs on him. There's nothing to say that she couldn't do that
right,
because in the one scene right before she throws herself off of the balcony, he does use his comm badge to find out where Cisco is, and
Right.
Cis and he taps it and asks where Commander Cis or Captain Cisco is. It tells him that he's in the security office with Constable Odo, and
Right.
so that's when O'Brien makes a beeline for the promenade to go to the office, and as
Yes.
he approaches the promenade and walks under the bridge, she calls his name and then throws herself off of it. So it's possible that she was keeping tabs on him through his combat. She heard him ask for the location of Cisco, and then she just tracked him. And as soon as he
Yes.
got too close, she was waiting for him, and
Right.
boom, there you
Okay.
go. That could be, but see, the thing is, it's never explained.
Yeah.
That's never shown. And
Right.
there were plenty of times where, again, like there's one scene where he's using his comm badge to ask how quickly he could render her unconscious.
Right.
And
He's doing
why
it in the next room. In
Well,
the
no,
next scene.
no, he does it. He does it. He's in one of the crawl spaces in one of the Jeffries tubes,
Oh, that's right.
and so
Oh,
he's
that's right. I'm
alone.
sorry.
Yeah,
Yes. There's
he's in
another
the crawl.
scene where he's in like the living room and she just went to the
When he
bathroom
It was
or to their
shortly after
bedroom.
the it was at the end of the party, and they had
Yes.
been talking about Paul Race. Jake and Odo had brought up Paul Race to
That's what it
him,
was. That's
and so
right.
he was asking the computer to give him information about the Paul Race. But yeah, Keiko was in the very next room.
Yeah.
So it's not subtle, it's not
Yeah.
quiet, you
Yeah.
know. But all these times he was using the comm badge, and it never occurred to him when he was away from her to, tap the comm badge and be like, "Hey, I don't have a whole lot of time. Here's what's going on. I need help." And have Dax and Cisco and everybody else working on a plan while he's continuing to carry out the
Her orders.
modifications.
Yeah, exactly.
No
Yeah.
reason. And then, they've got the pads that they're passing around with instructions and detailed maps of the station and everything else on. None of those is networked.
Right.
You don't get any Wi-Fi signal down there in Jeffrey's tubes, O'Brien. You can't send a quick message on your tablet to let everybody know, hey, here's what's up.
Yeah.
And then when he enlists the help of Rom to help him out with this whole situation, why didn't he tell Rom what was going on and then direct Rom to go and tell Cisco? She's watching you. She's not watching anyone else on your staff. You had a person who you explained how this was a hush hush top secret mission, right? You could have taken that time right then, the same amount of time it took you to convince him to come into your confidence. You could have said, I need you to deliver a message to Captain Cisco and Odo and Dax and all the rest of them and tell them this is what's going on.
Right.
Problem solved. He doesn't do that at all.
Right.
So now I understand, again, this was, they were trying to tell a particular story. Also, it was the 90s, and for some reason, they just didn't take I just feel like they don't take technology into account for a lot on these
Right.
shows, you know? And so for the sake of the story that they wanted to tell, we had to pretend like all of these things don't exist. I mean, we had text messaging in the 90s. It was very rudimentary, and you had to push a button, 6 or 7 times to get the right letter that you wanted,
Right.
but it existed. It was there.
Yeah.
He could have done it.
Right.
So,
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And I guess while I was watching, I didn't think about that, so it didn't take me out of it. Would you say that ever since you've seen this episode, you thought about it, and so it takes you out of it watching this episode every
no,
time?
it's one of those that it's like I still think this is a great episode. I love the story that they tell because it gives us more Keiko, which is more than we've seen of her utilization of that character. We get to see a more social dynamic on the station, which I love because we get to see the party. Um,
Mhm,
we get to
mhm.
see um, we get to hear more about the prophets. And as a person who knows what's coming soon, I like seeing that overall lore develop because all of this stuff is very important. This is
Right.
not going away. This is we're going to see more of this. My
Gotcha.
spoiler, we're going to see more. So
Okay,
I
good.
like all of those things. But as a person again who has seen this a lot, when I'm doing like a casual rewatch, these are the nitpicky things that I like to pick apart about the episode.
Right.
Like another thing I thought of when I was watching it too was when he taps his comm badge and asks where Cisco is and decides to walk there. It's like, why? Why did you decide to walk there?
Yeah.
Initiate a site to site transport. Beam yourself directly into the office. She can't
Yeah.
see you.
Yeah.
She can't see you.
Yeah, it would have been if they had just done some simple scene where they show her. I mean, if she has knowledge about Keiko that if she's a being that has knowledge that she shouldn't have, it would seem reasonable. They could have hand waved it of she has done something to his comm badge. Give me your comm
Right,
badge, and she does something to it, and now it'll notify her if something
right.
happens. But
It
yeah,
anything simple, like, just they could have done something along the lines of, like, they kind of build it in there, you know your wife, but your wife knows you better. So
right,
your wife knows that you would be thinking of all these clever little things, and your wife knows how talented of an engineer you are. You underestimate yourself, your wife doesn't.
mm,
So, just anything along those lines to be like, okay, so because of this, I don't know, yeah, we're gonna set up a proximity or whatever. If you go within a certain whatever of these people,
right,
it will alert it will alert me. It will do this, and then you will come back to find your wife dead. Something along those lines. Like just anything to kind of give us a reason for why he does not do anything to alert these people until it's too late.
right,
Um,
right,
it's just one of those. I guess they just feel like people don't pay attention, and I feel like if they were to do this show today, I do feel like somebody would have addressed that because I feel like
mm,
today's shows, especially the ones that are a bit more sci-fi bent or whatever, they do a better job of kind of taking care of those little hanging bits on plot points, to snip those
right,
off. The Expanse, we watched that show, and I think The Expanse was really good about that. Like, we didn't necessarily always have them say the dialogue that they did that thing, but you would see the characters do certain things in the background, and then later on, when something was stopped or an advance warning was set or whatever it was, they'd be like, "Oh, because I did that," and we would see where that came into play. They were good about
right,
doing things like that now, but they certainly didn't do that in shows like this, and it's probably like the learning curve from shows like Deep Space Nine as to why shows today
right,
do it better. So I do like being able to see that as well.
right. Gotcha. Yeah.
So now this episode also is one where we see Odo get incapacitated for the first time. Odo has now become a solid. So
Mm,
while his investigative prowess has in no way been diminished, he clearly still underestimates the fact that he has a rigid body and is susceptible to
right.
damage. So he had no
Yeah.
problem getting real close to the chief, who then
Yeah.
knocked him out. Or yeah, yeah,
Right.
knocks him out really. So I guess Odo's got a glass jaw because he only took one punch and he was down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny to think how many times has someone been cornered by Odo when he was in his changeling form, and that was one way he got people to basically quote unquote confess. He would confront them in a way where they were put in a pressure situation, and then he knew they were guilty, and they lashed out, and that's how he got
Yeah,
permission to arrest them. Basically, this person attacked me,
yeah, they
and then
lashed
used
out and
that to.
just hit a solid wall of goo. Nothing happened to him, but now he's got all the evidence he needs. Now,
Yeah,
O'Brien's able to get the drop
that
on him.
strategy doesn't work
Yeah,
anymore.
got the
Yeah.
drop on him and clocked him in the jaw and took him down. So,
Yeah, yeah. But the real character who gets a lot of actual character growth here is Rom. Rom was a great character this
Rom
episode.
annoyed the hell out of me in this episode.
Oh, he did.
Yes,
I mean, he's supposed to, but
he does a great job.
why don't you say what?
Fantastic job. If I had to listen to him say "Raktajino" one more time,
One more
oh
time,
my
yeah.
god.
I
This
like Genos.
No,
I
he didn't just
I want a
say it, it was,
Rakutino.
"Oh, is that what we
Sweet,
drink on
sweet,
the
sweet
day shift, the
Rakutino.
swing shift? Raktaginos?" And he would say it
Yeah,
like
that's
that
right.
every time.
Rakutino.
"Raktaginos?" It's like,
That's
"Shut
right. You
up!
you've watched
Just"
this show so many times. You know exactly how to
Yes,
do that
that's
little
how he talks,
Rakutinos.
yes. "Is that the drink of choice on the swing shift? Raktaginos?" Ugh, we don't really drink anything on the third shift.
Dude, you've got it
Shut up.
down. You've got it down right now. Oh my
I
gosh.
can't stand it. It bothered me so much. But
Yeah.
that's his, and it's his whole speech pattern. I don't
Right.
like it. And then when he comes in at the end and and asking for breakfast, I would like a short stack of pancakes dripping with syrup. I was like, oh, who told you to talk this way? It is annoying. And pineapple. Ugh,
Yeah. I
God.
think it's part of his cute little freaky charm is he's
No,
trying to
it
try
was
other
so
things.
annoying. I mean, that is where I will give you that. I will give you that. When after he placed that breakfast order and I sat there and I listened to it, I was like, you know what? I feel like I've been eating wrong, you know? Because it never occurred to me to put pineapple on pancakes,
That's
you
a good
know?
point.
It's just like what a combination. And now it's like, and I don't know, it sounds stupid, it's simple, it's pancakes with pineapple or whatever, but it's like, we're kind of programmed as to what would be like acceptable breakfast foods or whatever,
Right.
but there's nothing to say you can't, throw
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff in there to make any meal, not just breakfast, but anything. And I just
Yeah.
don't do it.
I'm,
And
I'm gonna
it's
take a I'm gonna take a quick side note and say there's a Brazilian steakhouse restaurant that opened up near me recently. And like the dessert, like a Brazilian steakhouse is one of those places where they walk the food around. Like, do you want a piece of steak? Do you want a piece of shrimp, chicken
it's on the like
on the skewer?
spot, yeah.
Yeah, and they give it to you. Well, they come around with the skewer of roasted cinnamon. It's got cinnamon on it, but roasted pineapple. Oh my gosh, it was so good. You were talking about pineapple because that's what Rom says, and when
Oh, I
Rom said
love
it, and when you said it, I was like, oh man, it was so
I
good.
love pineapple. I
Yeah,
love pineapple. I had some
I
pineapple juice today,
yeah,
and it was a store-bought juice, and, I was at my sister's bar, and they had, some kind of event, and so for some reason, there was pineapple juice there, and it was ice cold, and it was delicious, and again, I was like, I don't buy pineapple juice, but I'm
mm,
gonna, cause it
mm,
tasted so great, and I was like,
yeah,
"This is wonderful," and it just I that's twice today that I've had something. I'm like, you know what? I have to reconsider how I do food because it's just like there's so many things that I just don't eat or drink or whatever, and I have no
right,
reason for why I don't. And then when I
right,
do have them, I enjoy them so much. I
yeah,
love pineapple. Do I
right,
eat it all the time? Absolutely not. Don't know
yeah.
why. But every time I have it, I'm like, you know what? Pineapple may be my favorite fruit, and I'm just always in surprise of how great it is,
Well, I
when I
imagine
don't
it's
have
simply
it.
because pineapple is a little harder to prepare than other fruits. Quite frankly, that's probably what it is. It's just a harder fruit to
Eh,
prepare than others. Just purely
maybe.
on a purely get it, prepare it level. That's it. Boom.
That's true.
Bananas,
I mean,
apples. You don't have to do a damn
yeah,
thing.
blueberries, quick wash, and you got a whole handful of them, and they're gone.
Exactly.
But maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's why I don't get pineapple that often because it takes more to get
Yes.
to it.
Yes.
But seriously, every time I have it, and when I have it on other things, I enjoy it. Like my grandfather used to make a great pineapple upside down cake. Loved it. But
Right.
I mean, I don't even eat that cake. I don't make it. I don't know anybody who makes it.
Right.
I certainly don't buy it. But yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
I
getting
we
too
got
old to be having food issues, and it's not like it's not food allergies, it's just realizing I don't eat any of these things and I
right.
have no reason. I'm like, I
Right.
mean, yeah, obviously I don't want to like, gain a bajillion pounds or whatever,
Right.
but I mean, it's fruit, man.
Yeah.
There's no reason I can't have pineapple.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, so
Mm.
now like flash forward like 6 weeks and we're gonna do this show and I'm gonna have like 6 chins because all I've done is gone around and eaten all the things that for some reason I was like denying myself.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, what happened to you? Star Trek.
I'll do a quick tangent again. My mom, Costco, she bought some bread at Costco because it was fresh. And when you buy bread from Costco, you get 12 little loaves. And she was like, "You want three?" And they're delicious, but you got to eat them quick because bread, it kind of goes bad a little quickly.
Yeah.
And then my roommate, he saw that I got some, so he got more. And I was like, you're just. I mean, bread is just unprocessed fat. That's all it
Yeah.
is.
It's
Yeah,
all the carbs and then they just sit
yeah,
on you forever and it's
that's
just
right.
yeah. I used to have a
It's
bread
just
maker, and man, I would make bread twice a week, just no
yeah.
problem at all. Just whole
Mm,
loaves, and I would make it, and just be
yeah.
like, and then you can add all your own flavors and seasonings and whatever else
Mm,
to them. And
yeah.
there is nothing, and you're absolutely right. There is nothing that beats hot, fresh bread. Nothing beats it. I don't care
Yeah.
what you do. I mean, you can be having the worst day, and someone brings you fresh from the oven bread. And it tastes completely different from bread. Even if the bread is fresh, it was made like yesterday. Eating it
Yeah.
today, it's still good,
Hmm.
but there is just
Yeah.
something about it. It just came out of the oven. You're
Yes.
getting that
Yes.
first slice when it's finally reached the temperature where you can slice it. Oh man,
Yeah. Harry,
nothing
you
beats
can't
it.
talk like that, man.
I'm
You
just I,
can't.
I'm just saying
You
that's why I
can't.
was that's
Ugh.
why I was making bread twice, sometimes 3 times a week. It's also probably
So you had
why
to get
I
rid of it
yeah.
because you were.
Yeah, it's also why I probably ballooned, a good 50 pounds when I had that thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, there's nothing beats it. Nothing beats it.
Yeah.
And it would make all you could just all of it. It was so great. Everything was contained. You just put all your ingredients in the basin and turned it on, and it would mix everything. And you could set it so that it would proof the bread and let the bread rise. If you had like a yeasty bread you were making or whatever it was, it would do all that stuff for you all in there, and it would bake it. So like I would just put everything in it in the morning, and then I would set it,
Hmm.
and I would go to work. And by the time I came home from work, I had a warm loaf of bread, and it would keep it warm for me as well. So yeah, it
Right.
was. Now I kind of want a bread maker. Anyway, we're talking
This is
about
my fault. This
yeah.
is the tangent
We
I put
should
us
not
on.
have
I'm just
talked.
saying,
No,
but
we shouldn't have talked about food. And and don't gotta say a banana nut bread. I'm not even a big fan of nuts, but banana nut bread, I love it.
my mom makes a great banana bread. I'll
Absolutely love
say
it.
that.
And banana bread is fine, but there is something about a banana nut bread, and with walnuts in particular. I love it. I love it every time. And I have a food consistency issue. I like all of my food to be the same consistency, but that is my one exception. Banana nut bread. I will eat that. So,
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
mhm.
Yep. Banana bread. Yep.
All right. Well, now that we've talked about food and thoroughly upset ourselves, uh, let's return to this episode. I want
Of
to
course.
give yet another shout out to Rosalind Chow. I really feel like she does such a great job here playing this evil Keiko,
Hmm.
that we're getting. And
Hmm.
especially considering like we know the background, right? Like watching her in those scenes where like they're doing the birthday party, and she's so warm and loving and sweet, and she's just this great wife who made this great meal for her husband, and she's got his favorite drink, she's got his favorite cake, she's got this great meal that everyone is just in awe that she made, and it tastes so good, and all of this stuff. And we know that it's not her. I
Right.
mean, it is her, but it's not her, you know? So it's just like, gosh, I love that whole scene. And then, the way that she's making fun of Miles, like when she makes him sleep with her in the bed. And then after she throws herself off of the balcony and they're in the infirmary and she makes him kiss her in front of
Yeah.
Julian, just
Yes.
all of it. I loved it. I loved the delivery of all of it. I was like, man,
Yeah.
she does a great job.
Rosalind. Yeah. Rosalind Chow kills it. She's the standout this episode,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Absolutely.
Even though O'Brien is technically our lead. Um, and I like the fact that Rosalind Chow gets the chance to really stand out because she has been to a bit regulated to O'Brien's wife. She's there for their relationship. Even her herbology or what is it?
She's a botanist.
There we go. Her botany is a characteristic of her, but we don't always see her do it that much. She was a teacher on the station during season 1, but that fell
Blew
away
up,
like
literally blew up
literally.
in yeah.
Season 1 finale. I don't think we ever really got a full explanation for why. I mean, we guess we did of like the Bajorans never wanted to bring it back because of their kind of xenophobia that they had growing, but it's not like that's true anymore. But anyway, um, Jake
Yeah.
graduated, and so it was like it's not longer something we have to worry
Yeah, I mean
about. But
that's pretty much what happened was Jake aged out and there became no, there was no need for a follow-up there. Jake
right,
aged out, so yeah.
right, right. Um, yeah, so she definitely kills it. I love the whole fight. I feel for O'Brien and Bashir at the end of the episode where they kill her plants because I have killed my roommate's plants, like plants that he had kept since college, like over 10 years. I didn't water them properly and they died. And I felt terrible because I don't care about plants at all. I don't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I
I've
don't.
always thought of myself like I like the idea of plants,
Yeah.
but I also am like I want plants that have a use.
Right.
So I'm all for growing things that I can use. Like I always wanted to have like pepper plants. I really
Mm,
enjoy. I really enjoy a lot of like the hotter peppers, spicier
ooh,
peppers, things like that.
yeah.
And one of the probably the best that I think you can get are like those little cherry peppers,
Okay. Yeah.
and apparently they're really easy to grow. And I've always wanted to just have several growing in my backyard or whatever. Never done it,
Right.
but I would like to. I had a friend in high school whose mother grew strawberries and blueberries, and I remember her telling her story of how she got her blueberry patch started. It was basically she just took a bunch of old blueberries that were like getting kind of rotted, moldy, or whatever, and she just threw them in her backyard. And over time, it just kind of took over and did its own thing. And I mean, their whole backyard was like covered. Like one side was nothing but this massive blueberry patch that she had just been cultivating over just a couple of years, like maybe 2 years
Hmm,
tops, because
right.
apparently it's a very hardy vine and it grows in pretty much every kind of weather, and you
Right.
don't really have to do a whole lot to maintain it. You just gotta, as long as you live in an area that you can either that gets water regularly or you can give it water
Mhm.
semi-regularly, it'll take off,
Right.
and so yeah. And then she's like, yeah, anytime you want blueberries, you can just go back there and get you some. And it was
Yeah.
just the easiest thing in the world. We would take a rake and just kind of knock through and get a bunch.
Right.
So yeah, but I the thought of growing plants that are just pretty, I guess, flowers or whatever, I don't see the point. I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
that's not for me.
as I was talking about not liking plants, I was like, actually, I do have one exception. When I moved into my current place where I'm at now, I live close to where my parents live, and my mom has had, I think they're called Christmas cactuses. It looks almost like a cactus in that the leaves are a little bit pointy, but they
Mhm.
like bud off of each other, so they're actually more like stems almost. But every year around Christmas time is when they bloom, and they get these long purple blooms, and they look really nice. And so I thought about getting one for myself, but my mom convinced me that they're more hassle than they're worth or something. I forget what exactly was her reason for why you probably don't want one. But I did briefly consider it, and then I was like, yeah, it's probably true. I probably wouldn't take care of it properly. So
Yeah. I remember when I was in high school, and we would do all these little experiments and stuff like that, and they would give us like seeds to try to grow things. And I would always be like, oh, this would be cool to have and do. And tomatoes were a very popular plant to
right,
have and cultivate and everything else. But I never did it, and I always thought that well, that'd be cool if like one day I would have a garden. And there was a place that I worked in Kentucky that they cleared out a whole area of our back lot and turned it into a little vegetable garden just for the workers. And people would like come after work and they would, spend a couple of hours back there planting and tilling soil and raising their crops and sharing stuff and whatever else. And I used to think that it was so bizarre because but I was like, I would never do this. Once I'm off work, I'm leaving. I'm going home. There's no way I'm coming back. But at the same
right,
time, I was like maybe 20 years old, and everybody who participated in the garden was much older than me. And
right,
I just always took it as, oh, that's a older people thing to want to garden and spend time doing something like that and whatever else. And
right.
now as I'm getting older, I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to have a garden. I want to grow stuff. Be
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. Yeah.
So Well, final thoughts on this episode. Anything that you feel like um, you missed or you didn't realize or want to hear more about or anything like that?
I mean, the only thing I guess we haven't talked about is just briefly that the episode, the Rom storyline is we just real quickly. Rom starts off by going to his brother's bar, asking for bacon and eggs because that's what humans eat, and he's on the
That's the chief special.
yeah the
'Cause he's
chief
on the third
special,
shift, and
and
that's the chief special.
of course Quark gives him a hard time, says you're on the night shift, you work in like the waste
Waste
disposal unit,
extraction.
and so you're not being used properly. And his brother's like, well, someone has to do it, and he's like, yeah, but why does it have to be you? Does Chief O'Brien even respect or even care for you? Like, I'm your brother, I want what's best for you. Okay, Quark, all right. But Rom is like, I'm willing to do the work. And then when he gets sent to the mid shifts, the day shift, so he's super excited, as you were just pointing out, Ractagino. Do we do
Ugh.
Ractaginos? Yeah. Anyway, hilarious scene, even if it annoys the crap out of you. But apparently, bacon and eggs don't work for him, which is why at the end of the episode, he asks for pancakes because that's what the day shift eats. Which I think I imagine that will also not be his stomach will also not care for that.
Considering Ferengi eat bugs and slugs, I can't
Yeah,
imagine making the switch from that to pancakes is
yeah,
gonna go well.
yeah. So I just like the storyline because Rom is that character who he's the underdog, especially against his brother. He has to he earns his stripes in this episode with
I
O'Brien.
I do like that his character is thriving under, I guess, what we would consider the human standard of society. He's
Yes,
got a good job, and as long as he does his job, he does his work and does it well, he's
right.
getting recognition, which leads to promotions, which leads to greater notoriety. Versus
Yes,
in the Ferengi system where you have to scheme and you've got all
manipulate.
this
Yeah,
manipulate people and it's all about money and
right.
sleazy a little bit, like even Quark says you could be here looking at half naked Dabo girls instead of standing waist deep in waste, which
Right.
I could see the appeal considering you're standing in waste from countless species. Ugh, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah,
And
it's a good point.
you chose that over
Mother
scantily
report.
clad Dabo
Yeah.
girls.
I mean,
Mm,
I think about Rom, and I'm like, he had plenty of experience under his brother to know what it was like. So when he rejected
yeah.
that lifestyle,
What's that say about you, Quark, that your brother chose to stand in the waste from countless species that you know, and then the ones you don't that are just
yeah,
passing through.
yeah,
Who
exactly,
knows what they've got, and then
exactly,
he chose that over
yeah,
working for you,
yeah, exactly,
and you know, and he gives it. And as you recall from the episode, the Union episode where he finally stepped down, he talks about it, is like, the only thing I had to hope for was that would die
died,
someday,
yeah,
and then I would get the bar,
yeah,
and now
yeah,
he's on the day shift and he's getting
right,
choice assignments and
right,
people know who he is and some girls
yeah,
hitting on him and
yeah,
he's coming up in his own
yeah,
way. He's becoming a respected person on the station,
right,
slowly but surely. His
yeah,
son is doing well as well. Both and interesting again, both of these Ferengi had to leave their society in
right,
order to find, you know, meaning,
right,
happiness for their lives because they weren't successful for Ferengi. It wasn't like they were successful in their own culture. They
right,
weren't. They were
right,
exploited. They
right,
were both
yes,
exploited.
100%,
And now they're in a society that values them for what they can actually contribute and
right,
doesn't belittle them or push them to
right,
the side or
right,
subjugate them in any way. And now look at him. One's an
yeah,
engineer, the other one is a future Starfleet captain in the
right,
making.
yeah.
So
And I really like the idea that, as you just pointed out, that Rom and Nog are succeeding outside of Ferengi culture. That
yeah,
again, I've said it multiple times. Oversimplifying, you know, the desert planet Dune, the ice world Hoth. Oversimplifying races down to, oh, the Ferengi are just greedy for money. I like the idea that no, that's a culture that the Ferengi have, and they've developed it. But there are people, like even
There
their
are
own
cracks.
mother,
Yes,
that
it's imperfect. It's an imperfect
yes,
system. That this is where Star Trek shines. We've
yes,
seen that now. They've done this with the Ferengi. We've seen them do it with the Klingons as
I was
well.
gonna say that.
This
Yep.
is when Star Trek is at its best, is when it shows
Right.
these kind of one-dimensional pillars
Right.
who who are the base representation of their entire culture, and we're just supposed to accept it. But when we find these people who break away from that, like we've got a Klingon who sings opera on the station and runs a restaurant,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. I'm
Unfortunately, we have
surprised we
not
haven't seen
seen.
more of that guy.
We,
Yeah,
I
we
was gonna
should
say
see
it's
more of it.
unfortunate we haven't seen. Well, I believe that the actor who played that character died, and that's why we
Uh,
never saw him again.
uh,
Um, but yeah, but I mean, even beyond that, I mean, we had Worf's son Alexander, who is not a chip off the old block. Um, we see Kalar, who also wasn't, much in the way of the Klingon. I mean, she did stuff. She was a Klingon ambassador, but
right.
she, was more with the Federation than anything else.
Right.
You've got these Ferengi here who, and as much as Quark wants to be a true blue, carbon or copy cutout of Ferengi culture,
Yeah.
he's not. He's
Yeah.
done a lot to deviate from that. We've seen that get him in trouble.
Right.
Brunt from the FCA was ready to kill him because of it. You
Take
know,
his husk. What is it? The slices,
the
the
desiccated
discs.
the
That's it.
desiccated remains and
Yeah.
mount him so that he could
Yeah. I
eliminate
love
his gene pool.
I love the commitment and buildup of a culture, but I like, as you just said it, the 3 dimensional. I like characters that break out from it.
Yes,
They
they do that so well,
yeah,
and this was probably this show definitely gives it to both the Klingons and the Ferengi in equal measure here of their
yeah,
development,
that's true.
and seeing the way that they've all deviated with Ishka, Mugi,
Mm,
and how women are treated. We saw that with Pell, the other Ferengi female, and
yes,
how when they discovered that she was a female and what happened with her and everything else. I mean, like there's so many different layers that we're given here of this culture and showing that it is evolving.
right,
Despite what we had initially been told about Ferengi, we
yeah,
are seeing that there's more to them than that, and how
right,
they are thriving, how people are finding that they can thrive outside of what was deemed acceptable as Ferengi culture. And
right.
then here comes Brunt, who kind of represents the the backlash of some of that. So yeah, I love it. I do love all of that, despite Rom annoying the hell out of me. I do love those things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's one of those episodes. It's a good episode, so I don't have a lot of critiques for it, and therefore it might seem like I'm just like we talked about bread and great pineapple for 5 minutes. It's not because I didn't like the episode. It's like I like it so much that I don't have to critique it for an hour.
Yeah.
It's like it was a good episode. So yeah,
Now, as a one aside, we will say, all the characters, all of our main characters appear in this episode except for one, and that would be Kira Nerys, the non-visitor, who's played by the non-visitor, did not appear in this episode. She is mentioned. We know that she is touring Decor Province with Shakar, is
it was
what
mentioned. That's right.
O'Brien says, but the behind-the-scenes story is that. She actually went into early labor during this episode, during the filming of this episode, or when they were supposed to be filming this episode, I should say. So that is why she is not seen. So,
Right.
just so you know, a little behind the scenes factoid for you. She was
I
off
had
delivering her
I
real
had
baby.
forgotten that she wasn't there, but yeah, that she was just
Yeah.
mentioned. And I love how just a few episodes ago they were kind of upset of the idea of Keiko going off to like not be there, but like she's pregnant with their baby, and but now they've gotten over it to the point where she's gone for a whole episode
Oh well.
touring with Shakar, and they've moved on. But
Well,
yeah, I
now
guess
that her and O'Brien almost, now it's okay that she's doing whatever it is she's doing.
yeah. Well, I
So
imagine we'll have I guess next episode that'll be part of the plot. You don't have to say anything. I'm
Not the
wondering.
next episode, but we're coming close. So we
Gotcha.
will get some things rolling along in the baby story as well.
Gotcha.
with some other things. So I'm actually looking forward to a lot of these episodes because these next ones coming up, man, they are great. I took a look ahead, and there's just
Mhm.
again just some great episodes that are next for us. So looking forward to that. Now, really quick, I just want to do some quick updates. We do know that the SAG after strike has officially ended. It is over. Shows are they're in their final whatever of I guess planning to get things back up and running and people going back to work and so forth. But it is officially over. So don't know what that means, like for how soon some things are going to be back, but you can just kind of expect
Right.
that it's going to take a bit for them to get up
Oh
and
yeah,
running
it's
again.
like almost six
Yeah.
months, right?
So, like it's right around
Long
right
time.
around now would have been the time that a lot of shows should have been airing their seasons, and a lot of the stuff wasn't even filmed. So don't even expect them to be like able
Right.
to put something out right away and whatever else. It's not. Um, there is a
Right.
campaign going on right now that you can take part on pretty much every social media platform, but in particular X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and it is for Star Trek Legacy. This is the show that was pitched after the end of Star Trek Picard, which would have featured an all new crew for the newest Enterprise, the Enterprise G, which was shown at the end of Star Trek Picard. So if you are
Okay.
interested at all, go and take a look at some of the stuff they're promoting for that, namely that the captain would be Seven of Nine. So if you are interested at all, go take a look. They've got some great graphics for a lot of the stuff that's out. I watched a bunch of them today. They're really short clips, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever it is, but it looks really nice. So if you're interested at all, go take a look. Sign the petitions. I know I've already signed all that stuff just to get it out there, just in the hopes that
It's a
yes,
tradition in Star
yes, it
Trek.
is. Yes, petitions for shows are a tradition in Trek. So yes, if you are in any way wanting Trek to continue and them to do a show that's based in the 25th century, no more rehashing of the 22nd, 23rd, or 24th, or any of that. Truly moving forward into Trek and not skipping ahead like Discovery did to the 32nd, but just the next
Right.
generation of stories, really. um,
Right.
go take a look at the stuff they're doing for Legacy and sign that petition. Prodigy has been officially released to Netflix, and not only can you now watch it on Netflix, but the third season of Prodigy should be arriving onto Netflix here soon, like in the next couple of months. So, because now that one was a
Right.
show that was already done, they just couldn't release it. So we should be getting that one relatively soon. Discovery
Right.
has already been pushed back to again mid 2024. Even with the ending of the SAG after strike, I don't see that changing at any point. So we're just going to have to wait on that. Same thing with Strange New Worlds. The only difference is the final season of Discovery is done. It was just that they had to do some reshoots for a couple of things that got delayed by the strike, so that's why it was pushed. But as far as I know, they have not started filming any of the newest season of Strange New Worlds. So that's that on the Trek front. If you are a person who is interested in sci-fi shows at all and you're looking for something to kind of fill the void while you're looking for things, I recommend a show on Max, formerly HBO Max. It's called Scavenger's Reign. Um, it is a sci-fi show. It's an animated show. It's a sci-fi show. And it's not like Star Trek, so don't think that just because I'm recommending it. It is it's very interesting, but it also has some highly dark elements to it. I just finished watching the first season and I thought it was great. Go check that out if you're interested at all. Only thing I'll tell you is a little snippet, teaser, whatever. I watched an episode where this guy was searching for a little recording device, and right when he found it, the ground erupted underneath him into a bunch of vines that wrapped all the way around his body and then twisted him in like six different directions. And of course, he died. But it was fantastic. It was horrific, but terrible and awesome all in the same go.
You've never seen
So
a guy die
I
like this before.
I never have. I never have. And I mean, animation aside, it was shocking, it was sudden, and even with me telling you, I'm telling you right now, when you go to watch it, you're not going to know that's the scene that you're watching until it happens because it's very quick. So yeah,
Okay.
go check it out.
Brutal deaths, check.
Yes. Basically, the premise of the show is they land on this alien planet and they're waiting for rescue, but while they're on the planet, literally everything on the planet is trying to eat them in some way. So you watch everybody try to avoid being consumed by something.
Right.
So there.
Gotcha. Lovely.
Yes. Anything for you besides all the books that you're reading?
That's it. I'm looking forward to it. Ah,
All
man,
right.
I love reading. I love good books. Looking
I do too,
forward
but you're
to.
putting me to shame. That is for sure. You are
Oh,
definitely putting
please.
me to shame.
I got
We're gonna have
way
to.
more time at work, and even then, like I said, I don't have as much time as I want. But Count of Monte Cristo, man, I was sad to push it back because I pushed it back, and then there's the Nemesis Games book, and so I'm like, Count of Monte Cristo, man, because
I
it's
don't know
been
if
on my
I'll.
shelf. I've had this on my shelf for years, man. I've been meaning to read it, and
Mm.
I have something else to read. I have something else to read. So
Well, I don't think I'm going to pick up War and Peace, but when you get to the count, I may break out my copy and
yeah,
read it as well because it's such a great story. It's I think it may be I mean, I love the Three Musketeers. Don't get me wrong, but the Count of Monte Cristo is probably my favorite
yeah,
story.
yeah.
So yeah,
Like I said, I'm excited to get back to it.
yeah,
Well, so next week is Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving to you and to everybody listening. Probably be about Thanksgiving when this episode comes out, or so at least the day
yeah. It'll
after.
be yeah.
So
I'll actually probably release this early because I don't want to be doing anything on Thanksgiving, and then we have
there you
Black
go.
Friday afterwards and so forth.
Yeah,
But yeah, so yeah. But so happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and as always, you can find us and follow us anywhere you happen to do your social medias, and of course, you can listen to us anywhere you happen to listen to podcasts. I do it on Spotify. You can check out our YouTube channel, which is just the Fire Caves. Do that search, you'll find our sweet, beautiful faces and voices, and you can watch all of our videos for every episode that we've recorded since I think season 3 was when we started our YouTube channel
sounds about
and
right.
have moved on. So if you want to go back and rewatch or re-listen or whatever that is, feel free to do so. And again, drop us a comment anytime that you want, and we'll maybe get back to you if you're good. But until next week, guys, take care of yourselves.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.